Chris Sabina with American Outdoor News. We're here with another episode with my good friend Mike Arnold, the author of Bring Back the Lions, and now we're going to discuss his latest novel, Bring Back the Wild. And Mike, I always appreciate your writing. You've been writing for American Outdoor News for a long time, and your books really captivate people's attention with your conservation efforts and everything that you do in Africa. Thank you again for taking the time to come on.
Hey, thank you for having me, Chris. I always love our times together, although some of them at meetings I don't want other people to notice for some reason. So you and Larry Weishuhn are bad for me.
You bring out the bad side.
No, I don't think so. I think I'm the bad person. But thank you for having me on.
No, I appreciate it. Now, your latest book, I got to say, it falls right into your niche as a wildlife biologist. What brought on this love for Africa?
Well, I read Ruark, Robert Ruark growing up, and I read Jack O'Connor, and I read all sorts of things, and I was a hunter. My dad taught me to be a hunter, and I dedicated to this latest book to he and my brother Randy, who's 5 years older than I am, and just celebrated a birthday. So he's in our parlance, he's dang near dead. So he's so darn old. But and I give him a hard time all the time. But he and my dad helped raise me in hunting, and I shot my first whitetail when I was 5. And off of Daddy's shoulders with a .243. I love that. I love remembering that. And that got me into, they got me into adventures. We raised quarter horses, broke them to saddle. We were in the country, obviously, and we were out in the woods all the time. And I just loved adventures out in the woods. And Daddy had a library, a hunting library. And he let us read every one of those books. And I fell in love with the idea of adventure hunting, hunting elk out in the west, hunting mountain lion, hunting mule deer, whatever, hunting whitetail deer. But I also fell in love with the idea of hunting over in Africa. And at the earliest time I could, I got over there. That was in 18 actually. It was the first time I went over. I've been a lot now, but quite a few trips every year. And as I did that, because I'm also a professor, a scientist, and I work in conservation biology, and as I put those two things together, I realized that the biggest conservation stories, the greatest conservation work continues to be done by hunters, people who fish, people who are sportsmen and women. And whether it's North America, Europe, the book covers lots of different places. I'm in Mexico in the book, in the Yucatan Peninsula, in Sweden, England, lots of different countries, of course, in Africa, and then here in North America, in British Columbia, in Oklahoma, wherever it happens to be. Yeah. All of the conservation work is really funded through hunters, people who go out and fish, once again, and it's because there's, like in North America, in the U.S., we have that excise tax. Every time you go out, because I know you love fishing too,
sure.
Every time you buy a rod and reel or anything like that, there's that excise tax. It comes right off the top of it. Every time I buy rifles or ammunition, there's 11% excise tax. And last year...
Pittman-Robertson Act.
Absolutely, the Pittman-Robertson Act, and then also with the fishing that came in, excise tax, and an excise tax recently on bow hunting equipment and all this sort of stuff. So it raised about $1 billion, right at $1 billion last year, and that goes straight to the states. I know. And that was just off the hunting too. So the fishing and everything else goes on top of that. And that money goes straight to the states. Feds can't touch it.
Yeah.
And that's always a good thing. In my estimation, it's always a good thing if the federal government doesn't get in the middle of it and start fiddling with the money. So anyway, that's why that book came about. I traveled all over. My first one was about Catata 11 in Mozambique, and we took a deep dive about conservation, community outreach there. And I wanted just to broaden and show people that it happened all over. It happens all over, including here at home.
Is this a continuation of Bring Back the Lions? I mean, what inspired this novel?
The thing about it is, for me, this is actually my sixth book. I like writing books. I've wrote 4 books before that nobody in their right mind would want to read because they're science texts. But specialists liked them and really appreciated them, and a lot of people bought them. But these last 2 are for, as my friends say, and my wife tells me, and my kids tell me, I tell a good story, and they're stories about what I'm passionate about, and that is hunting, and that is conservation and community outreach through hunting. And once again, their money and the community outreach is being done by folks who dip those lines in lakes and stuff like that too. But I focus on the hunting part. So this book, I wanted to broaden out and say, look, if you go to the Yucatan and you hunt brocket deer and these other and the bird species I hunted, conservation and community outreach are happening right there. And a model is happening in North America, in British Columbia, working with the Native Americans, North Americans there. And it's also working in Oklahoma, and it's working in Sweden and England, and it's working in, all these countries over in Africa. And so I wanted to broaden it. I wanted to show people that the same model is working. So when they explain it to their non-hunting friends, like my wife is a non-hunter, she's my videographer and photographer, and she eats meat, so she's not anti-whatever. But when we're explaining it to one another as hunters and fishermen and et cetera, we understand what's going on. And then when we explain it to our non-hunting friends, we can explain it and say, this is why we are critical for conservation and community outreach around the world, we as hunters.
Now, for people like you and I, our generation that grew up before the invention of Google and the internet and cell phones, we sat down and we read. We found a topic, we bought a book or went to the library, and we would get engrossed in our adventures. What outdoor writer really hit home for you? Who was your inspiration?
Oh, I mentioned Ruark and Jack O'Connor. Those were my 2, and that was fed by what my dad was reading, right, Chris? I mean, he was very much into that. But you got to remember that. So I was born in '57. And that's really, really at the crest of Jack O'Connor's writings, right? I mean, he was doing World War II, right? Outdoor life was given to all of the troops. And he was in there, and that's why he became so darn popular. But when I was born and, a little bit after that, obviously I started reading his. So honestly, it was mainly those 2 who captivated me. And I would wait for those magazines to come out.
Yep.
The hunting magazines, either Outdoor Life or Sports Field and Stream. But I would also wait for the next Jack O'Connor book, whether he was telling me about rifles, shotguns, he was always telling me about hunting. And he was always telling me, because I love shooting, he was always telling me about the shooting sports. So that's who really captivated me. And one thing I'll mention about these 2 books, that these last 2 books of mine, a little ironic and a little story on me. So when I wrote Bringing Back the Lions, and it came out in '22, my son, who's a millennial, he's 40 this year, and my daughter is 38, and my son-in-law and daughter-in-law are the same ages as my kids. My son came to me and said, "Dad, you're going to do an audiobook, right?" And I said, "Huh?" And he said, "Well, you're going to make an audio version, right?" And he said, "I go in," he lives in Atlanta. He said, "It takes me about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to work every morning." He said, "I'll listen to your book." He said, "I listen to books all the time." And I was talking to Frances, and so it's not just millennials. So my wife's a baby boomer, and Frances said, "Honey, you need an audio too on this."
That's
She said,
true.
Chris, I shouldn't tell you all this because I have an audio book and I want people to buy it. I don't listen to audio books. But Mark Haldane, who that first book was really about him and about his work there, he said the same thing to me. He said, "Darn, dude, I drive all over South Africa. You need to make an audio." So I was like, so there, people are still reading, but they're doing it in a different way than I grew up. I want to be holding the book, but my son wants to listen. He comprehends stuff
about
better.
convenience today.
Well, it's a convenience, and also he hears the story better than he reads the story, apparently. That's what he's told me. He comprehends better if he's listening to it.
I think that is a product of a generation of, and it don't apply to all, a generation of kids who didn't grow up reading books and reading the newspaper or current events. They're more visual or audio.
Yep, I think so. I think you're right.
For me growing up, I grew up going to Sagamore Hill, Teddy Roosevelt's summer White House.
Mm-hmm.
And going to Sagamore Hill, I got to see all his trophies on the walls and his lion mounts and whatnot, and his books and Peter Capstick.
Yep.
Those were the two that wrote me in.
Yep. No, it's true. I read Roosevelt. The interesting thing is I read his African Hunter and that sort of thing. The ones the books of his, and I still have them here, that are almost old as I am, are his ones from when he was out west on the ranches. Oh, love those books.
Yeah,
Absolutely love those books.
Yeah, there's always something. Now, how does being a wildlife biologist shape the message of both Bring Back the Lions and Bring Back the Wild?
Well, I'm real careful about this because my kids say, "Dad, make sure they realize this isn't a dry science book." But so you're in New York, and my agent BG Dilworth is from New York City, and so anyway, he came up with this brand which is Scientist Hunter, and it fits because I love nature. I love looking at things, and that's why I've been a professor since 1989, and I've been doing science since 1975. I am old. So, I love looking at things, and I remember as a kid going out and taking plaster of Paris, and I was a real nerd. Obviously, I didn't have a lot of dates, and I would take plaster of Paris and do forms of prints, of raccoons and possums. We didn't have a lot of wildlife around there. We didn't have white-tailed deer, for example, when I was there growing up. But anyway, so I've always enjoyed that. So as a biologist, I look at this and I say, what are the sort of the cool biological attributes of some of these animals? And, how do they do their living, make their living, if you will, and what affects them? What brings their populations down, not just poaching, but do they get poisoned? Do they harvest eggs of the birds? Whatever it happens to be. And I look at those, and I'm fascinated by the kinds of research that's going on, say, in these different places to figure out how many of whatever they have there and how many they can harvest. And then I also am very fascinated by and really excited to tell the stories of these animals and say, look, not just the game animals, But marabou storks, for example, I use them as an example of how the conservation of the game animals in various places keeps these funky scavenger birds. They're called the undertaker because they look like an old guy that's in a suit that's walking away from you. They really do look like an undertaker. And so how did they, why are they still there? Because we're not shooting them, so we don't care. We don't have a permit for them. So it's that sort of thing that my biology part, my scientist part, feel like does me a good service in these books and gives me interest too. So.
Well, there's science and biology in every aspect of our life, but
Yep.
you're able to make it a learning experience through adventure. And
I
that
sure hope
makes it,
so.
that makes it, it makes it more exciting to read. It's a page turner.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you saying that, and that's the point. Diana Rupp edited this book. She acted as, bless her heart, as we say here in the Southeast. She did Bringing Back the Lions, and she's my long-suffering editor at Sports Afield and at Roland Ward magazine too. And so, she did this, and she agreed to edit this one too, and did a wonderful job. But she asked me, Mike, what's your goals? What's your goal? When I gave her the manuscript, so she knew how to approach it. And I said, well, number one, I want to talk about conservation through hunting and community outreach and how we as hunters make a huge impact and a real positive impact in both of those areas. But I said, Diana, and this gets back to what you asked me, Chris, who did I read? I said, you know what? I also want in every one of them, every one of the chapters, I want adventure. I want folks to feel like, I'm not comparing myself to Jack O'Connor or Ruark. Not on my best day am I comparing myself to them as a writer. But I want them to get the sense of that kind of a story. Every one of the adventures. I want them to feel like they're a part of that adventure. And yes, they're going to learn. Yes, they're going to enjoy looking at nature with me. Mm-hmm. But I want them to have that adventure that I had as a kid. That's really what roped me in, right? And that's what you're saying.
Sure.
Capstick roped you in. I mean, it captures you.
Yeah, he was, you know what? He wasn't the greatest writer, but he was a good adventure writer.
Oh,
he pulled you into the story.
Absolutely excellent.
Now, you share a lot of stories in Bring Back the Wild. Is there a place or a conservation success story that really stands out to you in the book?
Yeah, it's hard. Since I wrote a whole book about Katata 11, it's hard not to focus on them. Everyone, I would say that their work there in Mozambique is the deepest and the broadest example that's in the book. And the reason I say that is because they've been doing this since 1994. Mm-hmm. And not only have they been doing it that long, but they also have benefactors like the Bella Family Foundation and other patrons, Michigan SCI, all sorts of different things that are putting money into that and helping them with that. So I'd say that as an example, if you're going to take one chapter away and just say, I just need one example. The thing about it is, in terms of adventures, it is hard to choose, but I would have to say going into the dry tropics in the Yucatan was one of the coolest things I've ever done. There were all new different things and events and adventures that I'd never had before, even though I'd been in the tropics in Central America and South America a lot with my work. I'd never hunted with a shotgun for a big game animal like these two little deer that are actually now, you said I have a lot of stuff behind. Those two little deer are up there. They're the brocket deer. And they were incredibly exciting to hunt. And they are listed by Craig Boddington and others as the most difficult North American trophies. Two little scrawny deer. They're related to our whitetails. They don't have branching antlers. They have little spikes. They have, they're like a spike buck, and they're tiny. But you're out in the middle of the tropical jungle, rainforest, the dry tropics, and you have howler monkeys all around you. You have, spider monkeys all around. You have all sorts of stuff going on, and you're in a rickety Machon 25 feet off the ground, and the darn thing shakes with every little breeze. And hunting those was just amazing. Absolutely amazing place to be. And then we got to eat my gray-brown brocket, and we got to eat him by a preparation method that the Mayans have been doing for thousands and thousands of years, and a lot of cultures have, and that is digging a hole in the ground, putting wood in it, setting the wood on fire, putting rocks in there, big rocks in there, letting the rocks get red hot. And I know you're a chef, so you like hearing about this stuff. No, I'm serious.
You give me ideas.
You get those rocks hot. You put the meat directly on the rocks. You cover it up with leaves from plants like trees, small bushes and trees that they know are aromatic. They put it on top of the meat. They put palm leaves on top of those, palmetto leaves, and then they put dirt on it. And they cook it. They let it just cook for, I've forgotten, 4 hours or so. And then they reverse the process. And they pull that stuff out. Oh, my goodness, that meat was good. And then they made it into things they call tamalitos, which is Mayan for tamales. But, it was the whole adventure. My goodness, seeing all this cultural stuff and eating great food, of course, and eating one of the animals that I got, using the meat harvested. Oh, my, it was just great.
That's one of the great things that people don't understand, people that don't travel, people that don't hunt. It's not just the adventure of being out in the field. It's experiencing a new culture, a new way of life, different traditions. It's a whole learning experience.
It is. It is absolutely that. You're exactly right.
Now, in a time where hunters may be misunderstood, what would you want a non-hunter to take away from your book?
Very similar to Bringing Back the Lions, honestly. Reading the adventures is part of it. Hopefully that, they will enjoy it. My wife, Frances, did, of course. But hopefully the adventures will capture them. But also seeing, number one, every scrap of protein from every animal. It doesn't matter what it is. Recently went on a crocodile hunt, for example, that's not in the book. And they got 650 pounds of meat off of that crocodile because it was a huge crocodile, and not a scrap was wasted. So, and on those brocket deer, which weigh, 25, 30 pounds, not a scrap. And we're talking about intestines, everything else, okay? People are protein starved in these areas. Nothing's wasted. And I also wanted them to understand that was part of the community outreach, and that's how you cut down on poaching, is you feed folks. You use the wild animals harvested to feed folks. But also, there's schools built, and there's clinics built, and there's roads built, and kids are educated, and people are taken care of financially because they're hired as as guides, like my guide down in Yucatan, Tigre. He's hired, and he's a community liaison person as well. Without the hunters there, he has no job. So what would he do? He would poach, and he would cut down trees. I mean, that's the fact of the matter. He's going to take care of his family.
Sure.
So I want them to come away with, wow, they may never hunt, but I would love for them to come away, and I think that they would come away from this book by saying, wow, I didn't know that's what hunting did. And I thought you just cut the heads off and left the body there to rot. I didn't know that that mountain lions, for heaven's sakes, have increased in numbers because of regulated sport hunting.
Yeah.
That they are a beautiful example of why you need regulated sport hunting, or otherwise they're going to go away again in all these states where they used to be extinct. Now they're back. And you eat the meat? People eat the meat of a cat? I didn't know that. And, your leopard deer hunted, they ate the meat. And it's like, of course they did. Cat meat's great. And the meat from my mountain lion went into chili. And, so it's one of those things where I'd love for them to come away with a new understanding, a broadened understanding of what hunters really do and contribute.
Now, getting back to what you just mentioned about the crocodile hunt, here in the U.S., we go to the store, we buy a steak, we buy a pork chop, we buy some chicken. In Africa or other parts of the world, they don't have that luxury. And people go down to the river to wash, to get their water, and they get eaten by crocodiles.
Yeah, the one that I'd mentioned to you, the one that I harvested, weighed about 1,500 pounds. He was 14 feet long.
Wow.
He was really broad, huge animal. And we found out that my PH after the fact, after I'd actually harvested this animal, he said, this is the one that took a farmer 2 or 3 weeks back before I had got him. But to give you an idea of protein-starved folks, and these are fishermen too, and farmers on a lake, so there's going to be more available protein for them in the form of fish and things than other folks have. But we walked, as we were going to a blind to hunt crocodile, we didn't shoot him out of a blind. I actually ended up having to shoot him out of a boat. But as we're walking, there is a Cape buffalo head, and just the horns and the muzzle and this sort of thing, and just chopped off like someone had chopped it off the body, which they had. And I asked my PH, what in the world's going on? And he spoke to the person in whatever the heck it was, the local language there. And he chuckled and he turned around. He said a croc had taken that Cape buffalo. Now that tells you how strong these darn animals are, because a Cape buffalo is going to weigh 1,500 pounds, 1,500 pounds. It had killed it. It was laying in the water with the croc in the vicinity, and the farmers came along and stole that Cape buffalo from the crocodile because they needed the meat protein so badly. So I'm thinking, now those are some tough folks. I don't want to pick a fight with those folks if they're going to steal a Cape buffalo away from a crocodile. So they really are. The meat, any meat is going to be used. And like I say, the crocodile that I harvested, they came in and took every scrap of meat off of him. And they have a lot of meat on them. I never knew it.
Oh, yeah.
Until I got back here and looked up the scientific papers on crocodile farming. That's when I found out how much meat there would have been. So
you basically could start a whole new shoe store with the skin from the crocodile.
Someone asked me about that, and they said, what's your trophy? And I said, well, actually, you're going to think it's crazy, but I said, I didn't keep any skin. I just want the skull. I'm a biologist, a mammalogist in the back. I love skulls, okay? I just think they're a cool trophy. Plus the fact, you can look behind me, I don't have wall space for a 14-foot crocodile on there.
Yeah.
And now, talking about the skin, one of my buddies, who's in the outdoor industry, actually, she's a marketer, and Shannon said to me, she said, are you going to have bags made for Francis or, whatever boots? And I said, well, in actual fact, you can do it. But I said, you really wouldn't do it off that kind of an animal. In crocodile farms, I'm going to nerd out on you for a moment. They apparently harvest them at about 3 or 4 feet because the skin's still real pliable.
Yeah.
And so on mine, you had the projections on his back were that that tall. I mean,
Wow.
if you look at the photo, I mean, the guy is knobbly, and the skin underneath, I guess, is too thick to work with. And so it wouldn't work for boots. Unfortunately, I'm a Texan. Wouldn't work for boots or whatever. I don't know how the heck they would process it. So the only skin taken off of it actually was by my PH, who wanted the back skin, a strip, so that he could dry it and have it in camp for folks to feel who are hunting crocodile and say, hey, this is what a crocodile looks like. Crocodile skin looks like. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, you've been there, what?
Oh,
15,
Lord.
20 times?
Yeah, at least. I'd have to go back and, of course, and Craig Boddington said this one time. He said if you count just transatlantic flights, there's fewer, obviously. But like this time, we went to Mozambique, and then we came back to South Africa, and we hunted the Kalahari Desert there in South Africa. And that's generally what I try to do, is go multi-country. And because that transatlantic flight is so darn expensive,
yeah,
you're going to pay a ton of money, especially post-COVID, to fly over there. And it's a long flight, which I don't mind. I'll ride on it, but it takes you a while to get there. It takes you a while to get back. So go ahead and stay a little bit longer. And so, it's quite a few trips. Quite a few trips.
Yeah. I think my flight was like $2,000 to go to South Africa.
Yeah, the one that we just had was a lot more expensive. I don't know why. I don't know if it was time of year or what. I mean, I can believe why it was, which is hunter driven again, because the darn plane was full of us hunters. So it's because it was peak hunting season.
Yeah.
In their winter there. So I suspect that's what it was.
It could also be that the airlines are so screwed up that
I'm trying to be nice here, Chris.
No, me, I'm not nice. I'll call it as I see it.
You're from New York, aren't you?
No,
New Jersey.
Coming from the POMA conference, Professional Outdoor Media Conference in Cleveland, it took me 2 days to get home from Cleveland. I had two canceled flights.
Oh, no. Good grief. You could have driven, right?
I could have drove in 10 hours. I could have taken the train. And they didn't want to pay for a hotel.
Oh, good grief.
Not until they canceled the second flight. The first one, they said it was weather.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, bad weather in New York. Oh, okay.
Yep.
I pick up the phone. Hey, my flight's delayed because of weather in New York. What are you talking about? It's just cloudy here.
Depends on who the pilot is, I guess. Well, when we went to I'll tell you, when I tried to go to South Africa last year to do this, at least the South African portion, we were going to be moving a bunch of rhinos, 30 rhinos, I think was what we were planning to move.
Wow.
So this is 24. I'm by myself, and I'm on a Delta flight, and we get about a third-ish. We're over the Atlantic Ocean, and they lose power. The lights go off. The emergency lights come on. Apparently, they lost power in the cockpit, too. And I couldn't believe it. And they said, we've got to turn around. And I'm thinking, the stewardess came, flight attendant came, and she said, the person next to me was going absolutely nuts. It was a lady. Chris, I wasn't very nice. I was so frustrated. They were turning the darn plane around. I knew what that meant because I had a real narrow window. And I knew my trip was over. I'd have to do it again some other time. Anyway, stewardess came back to try to calm this lady, and she left. And the lady looked at me and said, "Do you think we'll make it?" And I said, "Yeah, all the way to the crash site." And which is I stole from a comedian, a Texas comedian. But anyway, and so I don't think she wanted to sit next to me anymore. But, the airlines are I think they are struggling right now. They're struggling.
I think all their equipment is outdated. Their software and electrical, I think it's all outdated. The
hamsters have gotten too old.
Yeah, and the air traffic controllers, all that equipment is probably 40 years old.
Yeah, it's a struggle, but I'm still I was just praying the whole way that they would make it. And someone said, well, I can understand it's nerve-wracking being over that water. And I said, no, you don't understand. I wanted them to keep going. And I talked to pilot friends, and I had two pilot friends, including Mark Haldane, who flies constantly, and he said, are you nuts? He said, do you realize how close you came to going into the drink? He said, when they lose electricity, that's a bad, bad thing. And I said, oh, well, I just wanted them to keep going to Johannesburg, but they couldn't do that.
No, at least they didn't start passing out parachutes.
I think the only ones who had parachutes were the crew.
Where's the captain? Oh, he's gone.
He's gone. That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're running out of time. Where can we find Bring Back the Wild?
All righty. Well, you can go to my website, and that's mikearnoldoutdoors.com, and you can get a signed copy there. All right. There's a pull down, and you can get Bringing Back the Lions, and you can get Bringing Back the Wild. Just order it there, and it's the same price as on Amazon, but you also get a signed copy that way if you want one. But you can go to Amazon. You can go to Barnes and Noble. You can go to bookstores. Your local bookstore and order it in. Any of the ways that you can imagine that you do for other books, you can do it that way. If you get on Amazon, obviously, there's an audio book. There's a Kindle version. So, but if you want to go directly to my website, to that book, it's bringingbackthewild.net. But you can go to mikearnoldoutdoors.com and see what else I've been doing.
And you could also go to the August edition of American Outdoor News.
Absolutely.
Mike has an article that'll be in there for this issue, and there'll be an ad for Bring Back the Wild. You can click on either one of those, and you can purchase a book. I highly recommend it.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I appreciate your time again, and always great to speak to you, Mike.
Oh, it's wonderful to see you, Chris. We got to overlap at a meeting again, okay?
There's always Atlanta, and there's always Nashville.
There you go. I'll be there.
All right. If you haven't subscribed to the American Outdoor News podcast, hit that button now, and we'll deliver this right to your mailbox. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.